Welcome to the YMCA's Game Changers podcast. I'm your host, Brent Finley, President and CEO of the Anaheim Family YMCA. And my guest today has his name on more signs in the Anaheim area than any other set of names that you could ever find. This gentleman has over almost 60 years of history with our organization, and we're going to get into a bunch of those elements. We're going to talk about some things in the community, the impact of the Y moving into our future, and essence of family and fatherhood. So a lot of great things in store. But Paul, I want to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today and look forward to a great conversation.
Thank you, Brent. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, Paul, you've been in Anaheim your whole life. I know you were the valedictorian of Anaheim High School. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing and how Anaheim has really grown on you.
Well, thank you, Brent. I don't think I was valedictorian. I'm not even sure we had a valedictorian, but I was student body president of my junior high school, which is close by here, and I was really active in high school as well. So it was fun growing up in Anaheim, although it was very different back then. It was my parents moved here in the 1950s because they wanted to live out. They wanted to try to live out in the country. So it kind of gives you an idea on the rural elements that existed back then. A lot of orange trees, as you might imagine. A lot of new development. Disney was pretty fresh. The 5 freeway was rather new, and it was a great time to be in Anaheim, to grow up here during those days. Things were just coming into being in terms of the development. Disney was making an impact. The schools were some of the best ever. The athletic programs and programs for kids were amazing. They were plentiful. Boy Scouts. Anaheim YMCA, very, very popular, very prominent. Girl Scouts as well.
When you think about your time with the Y, and we will celebrate 60 years of your connection and involvement on so many different fronts and levels, do you remember the first moment when you got involved with the Y and what that memory brings back to you?
I do indeed. I was hanging out with a friend of mine playing basketball in their backyard. I was shooting hoops with a good friend, and his mom came out and said, "Hey, Jack, you've got to get ready for your Y meeting tonight." And I thought, I wonder what that is, And he said, "Okay, yeah." He said, "Well, why don't you come with me? I've got to be at our Y Club meeting tonight." It was called Gray Y. It was an elementary school YMCA group, and I said, "Oh, sure, I'd love to go." Anyway, it was one of those really, really foggy nights in Anaheim that a lot of people that grew up here will remember, the nights that we had where you could barely see a foot in front of your face. And his dad picked me up at my house, and off we went to this group of guys were meeting, and we were probably in 4th grade. And they talked about the Y leader, who was probably in high school at the time, talked about public service. He talked about having fun. He talked about the YMCA as an organization and also as an outlet for people to go and enjoy recreation as well as some mentorship. And that was my very first intro to the Y. And I remember feeling really great about meeting a whole bunch of new friends that I didn't go to school with at the time because it was just a little bit outside of my school district that I was in. And from then on, I developed a relationship with the Y and became more and more involved. And junior high Y was fantastic. High school Y clubs were the best that there were, including friendly competition between neighboring junior highs and high schools. And then there was Y camping, which everybody looked forward to. From the day we got home from summer camp, we started building and working towards going again the following summer. So it was really a great opportunity for Anaheim kids. And by the way, if they didn't have the money, they worked for it sometimes the whole school year just to get enough money to be able to go to Y Camp. So it was really popular, very, very fun.
It was great when they had that, that responsibility to do that eagerness and that desire to be there. But they had to have some piece of the pie to be taking that in their own hands. So their fundraising, going out and reaching out. I mean, very similar to our mayor of many, many years ago when the Y was created back in 1911. So do you remember your very first camp at Camp Fox at Catalina?
I do, but my very first camp was not Camp Fox. My very first camp was Camp Osceola, which was up in the mountains, San Bernardino Mountains. But Camp Fox, in answer to your question, Camp Fox was fantastic. My first year there was, I think, 1968. And the leaders of the camp were a man named Alden Esping and another man named Frank Sakaris. And they kept us on our toes. They were just fantastic, and they made it so fun. But there was different elements of the camp. One was there were many that were fun, many that were recreational. It was in Catalina Island. All high school kids, junior high and high school kids, having as much fun as a teenager should have at a Y camp. It was just an amazing opportunity, including hiking, swimming, skin diving, water skiing, crafts and arts and archery and so many different things. I would probably, if I thought about it, I could probably name a few more. But we had a great time, but there was also a serious element about it too. And the serious element was really more, it got you to be more introspective and to think, gee, well, what am I doing here? What are the other things? They had a spiritual component to it, of course, which I think led a lot to that introspection. And they also had a community service aspect about the camp as well. And so it really, what it was doing was, it was helping all of us that were there grow. It was making us think and expand beyond, hey, we're just here to have a good time. There's a bigger and higher purpose to our being here. And that was early on, even at Osceola, there were the underpinnings of that sort of educational part of summer camp.
Do you think that was greatly or partially responsible for who you are today, how you've been a great community stakeholder, how you run your business? Do you think that part of that YMCA tutelage has been ingrained in who you are now, Paul?
I not only think it has, I know it has. That part of my life was a part that was kind of not necessarily nurtured to the extent that it should have been or could have been. And so I took it seriously. And it now has gotten me to a point, thanks to the tutelage of people like Alden and Linda Esping and other people that I admire and respect so highly. They taught all their kids, all their Y kids, to think about those things that are going to make a difference, not only to you, but to others around you too. So it's certainly taught me to think differently in how I work with my professional life, but also my personal life with my family, how I treat other people. It's led me to a whole new set of rules that has really allowed us to be prosperous in many different ways. So I'm really grateful for that early education.
And I think about how the Y, we created a values-based statement probably 20 years ago, and the 4 core values of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility, almost like the 4-way rotary test, but how to guide your life. And I think Paul, when I got to meet you for the first time coming up 2 years ago, and we probably visited every corner of Anaheim as we were looking for a place to call home and reside in. And thank you for making that happen.
But thank you.
I know we shared a number of thoughts and stories about life, and I want to kind of dig a little bit into fatherhood. It's kind of a topic. It's something I think about more and more as I get closer to the end than I am at the beginning. And the essence of being a father, which you are, and I've met both of your sons a number of times, and I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on what it means to be a father, and how do you think about it differently now than maybe you did 20 years ago, and now that you're a grandfather as well?
Well, thank you, Brandon. That's a good one, because family is one of those super important things to me. It's really it's become a frontline activity for me, is fatherhood and grandfatherhood. And it's tough, because if you have a business like we have, there's a lot of facets to it. And they require attention. And so having a family and being a father is an amazing blessing. I've got to coach both of my boys in their baseball careers. Both of them played in high school, and both of them actually played in college, one further than the other. But it was a great reward. They had a good time, but I'm the one that got the reward for it. It was great, and it was great fun. But not only that, but to try to teach them different things that I was taught by my father, and to try to pass that along. And so I never met my grandfather, either one of them. My maternal grandfather nor my paternal grandfather I never met. So it was. But I've heard some great stories, and I know the lineage, and it has great meaning to me, and I've tried to pass that meaning along to keep my boys and my daughter too on a certain pathway. That there are some boundaries, and it's okay to move within the boundaries, but stay on the road and make sure that your path includes many different facets of what are going to be productive things in your lives. So that's been an important part of me trying to transfer those, and not always the easiest part to do, by the way, but certainly it's been an effort by my wife and I to try to teach in that regard.
And isn't it a joy to see maybe some of the the fruits of those efforts and that molding begin to happen as you see them play out their lives, whether it's giving back, taking more responsibility for their families. I mean, I found that just in our, with our family and our sons, when it happens, it's like, did that happen by chance, or was it a direct, reason of the impact of maybe your influence as a father? I have to think it is from that influence, but there is no guarantees. But it's got to be a joy when you see them moving in one of those directions that you really, aspire to.
Most assuredly it is, but let me just kind of veer off a little bit, because I want to just say how important I think it is that parents play a role in their children's upbringing. Anaheim has grown in many different ways. One of the ways it's grown, though, which is unfortunate, is the way by the way of fatherless homes. And I coached Little League here in Anaheim for 18 years, and picked a lot of the boys up from their homes. I know their circumstances. Many of them are not that good. Many of them are, most of them were single parent homes. They're being raised by maybe an older brother or older sister. Mom is working 2 jobs just to try to make ends meet to feed the family. Many of them are, for dinner, they have Cheerios. I want to say that my life growing up was not like that at all. But it was important because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and we certainly had the ability to rely on mom to try to make sure we were getting our homework done, teach us things, teach us, make sure we were getting fed, make sure we were getting dressed, making sure we were at school on time, making sure we were doing things. Now the culture is switched a little bit. It's changed such that, and I'm amazed, my hat's off to school teachers, because the public school system is being relied upon to raise children. And because the parents get their kids there and many times, and they many times can't help with homework or can't do things that are outside because, number one, there's language challenges, or there's even educational capacity, which they don't have. So bottom line is that there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of children that go every day without the mentorship that they really need to really, really beat the odds, to get to a point where now they can really go somewhere and have an education through the public school system, and maybe even get into the college level where they can go to a community college or even to a university and really upgrade themselves. Education is the great equalizer. It gives you parity. It doesn't matter how much money you come from, but if you have education behind you, you can do anything.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I've come to know that with our staff team at the Y, how many fatherless families are participating in our programs. Just being able to scrape up enough dollars to be able to participate in basketball, soccer, gymnastics. Again, as you said, no child is turned away due to their inability to pay. And thank goodness for our ability as an organization to make sure that mission moment is always applied to every family. But I certainly do fear for the culture, and if not, great portions of the country where fathers aren't connected, involved. And I think that mentorship that comes from a father and a mother, where you do have that dynamic duo shaping, helping, children grow to be the best versions of themselves, is critical. And it is a game-changing moment, and I think it equalizes the playing field. As you said, education is the great equalizer. I think it starts with the formative years of being involved in a family where there is a mother and a father, to make the setting for this child to be absolutely have the greatest potential. So that's one of the things that keeps me up night as a Y director. And again, but I know we're still committed to making sure that our organization is here for every kid.
This is why I'm such a big advocate of the after-school programs, because we try to fill that gap, and we try to be there as mentors and provide that education and physical fitness, mentorship, and a good direction for so many of these kids, thousands of kids every day. And I'm just such a believer in that, and such a fan of all the Y staff that gets involved and gets their fingernails dirty and jumps in with both feet and tries to help these kids, because they really need it. They really can use it. even if they don't want to use it, they'll really appreciate it later.
Yeah. And it's great to hear stories. So when you know, people that I've come to know over the years that were involved in a Y after school program, we have a great example here with one of our city council members. Carlos Leon grew up in our after school program and obviously has been successful and talks about it all the time. Literally every time I run into him in the community or an event, he makes mention of the after school program and what role the Y has had, playing in his life, helping shape him who the person and the leader that he is. But speaking about leaders, Paul, I've come to know you as an incredibly gifted, talented leader in our community, and I'm so personally blessed to have you on our board. And I know I do turn to you for ideas at times, and whether we're looking at strategy or places the Y should have presence. But talk about just maybe some of the leaders in your life that were great mentors to you. I know you mentioned one in Alden Esping, and certainly Alden is one of the best in the business. But are there some others that are in our community that come to mind for you?
There's probably a whole bunch, Brent. But when I think about leaders and people who've had an influence on me, I want to say the two that I admire the most are my father and my father-in-law, both of whom had businesses here in Anaheim. They both come from similar backgrounds. I'll just give you a flavor of that. My father was born in the 1920s, and his parents were from another country, spoke no or little English, had no skills. They had no resources. They never owned a home, and they never even owned a car. So it kind of gives you an idea on their socioeconomic background. And so there's little means every single day was survival. I mean survival, meaning how are we going to get through this day? And he got my grandfather had odd jobs, and he ended up becoming a meat cutter, and he was for a meat cutter back then, you got to cut the fat off of the actual meat of whatever you're trying to sell in your store. And so the little shreds of meat that might have stayed on the fat, that's what he got to take home to have soup, to make some soup. And they had that numerous times was the meal of the day, was the soup that could be derived from that little shred of fat and meat. So it kind of gives you a background as to my father. When he was a young man in the 30s, his mother died, which was a horrible thing for them. He was an only child. He had no brothers or sisters to bounce things off. Life was very difficult. They were on the East Coast, Philadelphia, and the weather was not good, and it was in the middle of the Great Depression. So it was a really, really tough time for many Americans. And the story that I'm telling is not that unusual. I know that there were a lot of people that were in that same boat, but it was very tough if you're the one that's in it. And so fortunately, he had an aunt that took him in, aunt and uncle that took him in, made sure he was dressed, made sure he had enough food to live on, and made sure he went to a good school. And if you remember what I said about education being the great equalizer, that's what worked to get him an opportunity to climb out of the impoverished system that they were in. And he ended up going to a great high school where he excelled. He went to, he was in the military. He signed up. He enlisted in the military. World War II was just starting. Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor. A lot of young men and women were enlisting to fight for our country, and that's what gave him. The military gave him a second shot. They gave him things that he'd never had before. They gave him a family of sorts. They gave him 3 solid meals a day. They gave him clothing. He had no clothing before. He had two types of two of everything. He had 2 shirts, 1 to wash, 1 to wear, 2 pairs of pants. You get the idea. Mm-hmm. So you have someone who now doesn't have to worry about what are they going to wear, and it also gave him a direction, and it gave him structure. And a lot of these kids that we deal with, this is how I'm kind of relating this to things that we do now as we pay that forward. The structure that maybe they didn't get at home, like my father had to look elsewhere to get, they're getting somewhere else. That's through the Y programs and things like that. A lot of kids, I think, are. But anyway, there's a whole nother story about my dad, but my dad made it through World War II. He fought at the Battle of the Bulge. He helped liberate a Nazi camp at Buchenwald, and somehow was fortunate enough to make it through the World War II, and has got some great stories to tell about it. And there are stories that it could have gone any direction. I mean, he was a combat veteran and being shot at and shooting back, and I mean, it was like Band of Brothers, but in real life. And my father-in-law, he also came from humble beginnings and had didn't finish high school, had a little education, worked his way up through odd jobs, became a father at a very, very young age, and started his family with next to nothing, backing him up in terms of resources, moved the entire family to California in the 1960s, and came here with little more than a hope and a dream of bringing his kids up in a good environment, and 3 daughters, and boy, did he ever. He had the ability to come here and start a business, and kept his nose to the grindstone, and it was very, very fundamentally in a good place, because even though they didn't have a lot of resources, they taught their kids what was right and wrong. They taught them, they were principled, then they taught them values. And from that, which is what his business was based on, he created a very, very successful business. And consequently, all his children learned and saw firsthand what it took for that success to actually take place. And so I was fortunate enough to marry his eldest daughter, and so I got to see him and know him firsthand and watch how he worked in the same way that my father worked. And it all boils down, the common denominator to both of them was that they both had incredible values. They had they didn't shoot for success. They shot for being of value to the community, value to their customers, and value to their families.
That all feels just in the essence of making a difference, not worrying about, obviously large economic returns on that investment, but the value structure that really sets the tone and makes a difference. And, and I think about how our YMCA can play a role. Obviously it can't be, it can't play every role in every family, but I think of how community life would be if we didn't have a YMCA. We didn't have the programming, we didn't have the staff that gives so much more, to these kids and these families than many other settings would. I mean, you mentioned school teachers. I think how difficult of a role they truly have in today's society. How they so much more than just the 3 R's. They are counselors. They become family members. Yep. And I have some good friends who've been in education for many years, and they just say how it has completely flipped. They spend more time on mental health challenges with these children and other younger teachers than ever before. And again, I think the Y does continue to play a great role. We're pivoting, we're changing. You're seeing where the Y is going in the next few years as we expand our campus, and that couldn't be one of the more exciting things as we see the transgression of the Y in our community. You remember well back to when we had a building and you were using the building and the programs that were going on in the the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now, Paul, you look forward to what we're bringing forth to the community, what we put into action now with the soccer program. But what do you think the future beholds for the community with the work that we're doing?
Well, I'm such a big believer in the Y programming, especially for after-school programs for kids of all ages, and I know that because I was one of them. And so I know what I learned from my Y mentors, and I think that people today are learning the same things. But I believe that the future of the Anaheim Y is magnificent. Maybe it's more challenging because of the dollars, but more encompassing as we try to reach out to touch lives of more and more children. And the programs that we have to offer are endless. Now that we can build some synergy with people with swimming pools or entities with swimming pools, even though we're building towards a new facility, that's the exciting part about it. The building of our new future is going to be one that's going to include not only physical fitness, not only mental readiness, not only after-school programming, not only soccer, not only basketball. There's so many things with things like the Airnasium and pickleball and Y programming that we can do not only in Anaheim but our other service areas as well. I'm super excited about our future, and I know that we're here to stay. And I shudder to think about what a community, not just Anaheim, any community would be like without a YMCA or some sort of youth program that the Y offers. And I'm hoping that that the Y can grow and can maintain the pace and the magnitude which we're going to have in order to serve that many people as we go into that future.
Paul, if you had a chance to speak to a couple of individuals that were obviously incredible game changers in any time era, who would those individuals be, and what would you want to ask them?
Wow. Any era?
Any era.
Okay. Well,
your choice.
Historical figures. Okay. Well, let's see. There's so many to choose from because there's a lot of people out there that we can get good information from. I think that, one interesting guy, and it kind of relates to what we were talking about before, is Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was not only an incredibly gifted intellectual of his time in terms of his scientific background and information he had to share, but he was also a philosopher of sorts. And one of his philosophies was, it sort of relates to what I was talking about before, and that is, he always said, don't aim for success, aim to make yourself more valuable. And I think that plays a role in so many people today because they don't value themselves. They don't feel that they're valuable enough. And there are so many resources that we can go to make ourselves more valuable. And as I said before, education is the great equalizer. And there's so many ways that people can get educated to make themselves more valuable. I think that's really a key figure that we should talk about as we go on. Not Einstein, but I'm talking about the idea of the focus of what a young person looks for. And I'd love to talk to him more about that part of it. But the one that really stands out to me, probably of all time, is he's the model of perseverance, and that is Abraham Lincoln. I'd either want to talk to Abraham Lincoln or his mom to find out what his mom must have said to him to make Abraham Lincoln persevere in the way that he did, because that's another thing that I think that kids especially give up a little bit too easy today. People give up too easy today. They give up on their friends, they give up on their jobs, they give up on their education, they give up on their marriages, they give up on things too easily. They don't take it serious. And they've got to make sure that once they say, I'm going to be involved with this, that they carry it through to the end. Abraham Lincoln, it's well chronicled and well known that he had so many failures in his life. If it wasn't for his perseverance or his willingness to pick himself off the ground, dust himself off, and jump right back into the fray, he never would have been the president, never would have had the opportunities he had to rise to greatness. He never would have written the Emancipation Proclamation. He started out with being a failure in business, being not so successful as an attorney. His mother died when he was quite young. He ran for Congress and he lost. He ran for Senate and lost. He ran as vice presidential candidate and lost. I mean, at that point in time, you're kind of feeling like maybe I should choose something else. But if it wasn't for his perseverance, he finally won. I think it was in 1860. He won. He became the 16th president of the United States. And what a great man he became to do all the different things that he did during that time for this country. So he's a model to be emulated, I think, just for his ability to persevere life's hardships. And by the way, one more thing, hardship in life is not a bad thing. Hardship is a blessing, because I don't think God gives us smooth roads for a reason. If we learn to handle rough roads, we can handle anything. If all we know is smooth roads, we can't handle the difficult ones.
No, absolutely.
So hardship is a blessing in our lives. So we need to embrace that.
Absolutely. And you make me think of the verse Romans 8:18, where the hardships that you're enduring today won't compare to the joys of tomorrow. And so when you look forward to the moment, the battle, but on the other side, how much, the benefits and just being tested to be able to go through it. I think you said something that's incredibly important. I think about it all the time, just this determination, the grit, the resilience. Those are traits that I think they're harder to come by. You don't see enough examples today. So I do worry about those things. And I put a personal reflection on it, and I find a lot of comments, and so my kids' phones blow up at all times of the day or the night when I stumble onto something like this, and really they're truly centered on determination. Don't quit, keep outwork, control your attitude, your work rate, and let everything else take care of itself. So Paul, you're just talking about those values and those essence of family dynamics growing up. What would you say would probably be in your life? What's been the greatest game-changing moment that you can think of?
I think that the biggest game changer for me was when I started in business. It's really tough to balance the family life and the business life because they require so much time. And so to try to keep balance, I had to give up sleeping. So no, I didn't really give up sleeping, but I felt that I did because there was just not enough time in the day to do all the different things that I really wanted to do. But what I did was I learned how to not only balance, but how to most effectively and efficiently utilize the time that I was given, the time that I had, to do all the things that I wanted to do. And it was at a certain point in time where I knew that I was doing well in business. I was doing better than I thought I would be able to do by sticking to the principles that I was adhering to, and the part of me that wanted to give back. And I felt like I was given a lot of resources through many blessings, and that I wanted to pay that forward and do what I could now to give back to my community. To if I could give somebody a hand up or just some assistance, whether it be in knowledge or in ability to provide them with some resources that they just don't have, that would give me a great satisfaction to know I gave them a stepping stone to their own success.
Well, Paul, those are some incredibly special traits. They're ones that we're very fond of in you, and certainly because of essences of like that. Paul, we could not be more happier to be honoring you at our gala, our 5th gala next March 2024. And it's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a great time, but it's certainly going to be the night to honor you. And what I hope that some of the outcomes from that is others will take that and they'll begin to run with it. They'll want to pay those essences forward. So it's not about just, it's going to be a fun night. It's a great night, but I think there's some lessons learned that we can capture those and have others be exposed to it. And again, from that outcome, that the community gets better from just that small opportunity to kind of hear about your story as that tribute. So we couldn't be more excited for March of 24. It'll be a great night.
Me too, Brent. I got to say, I'm very honored and extremely humbled to be the honoree that night. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have a lot of fun that night. We're going to have, it's all about the kids. We're going to try to utilize whatever resources we can to muster up to raise as much money as we can to fund these programs as they're so vital to our community. So thanks for that opportunity. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, we can't wait. It's going to be a great night. Well, it's been a fabulous morning here. Going into some topics, some subject matter, even getting to know you a little bit better. And I think I know you fairly well after 2 great years of being with you, around you, and on our board functions and just in general essence of the community. And I'm proud to be a friend. I'm proud to have you on our great board and the great things we're doing as an organization. And you hit the nail on the head. We're doing it for kids, families, and teens. And we want no kid to not have an opportunity to be a part of us at some point in their life. So thank you for being with us.
Just one closing remark. And I want to just say what a pleasure it is to be on our board. And for those of you who hear this podcast that don't know, our board consists of people from all over our community, different businesses, small and large, different groups, small and large, homeowners, people that care about our community, people that grew up with the Y, people that didn't grow up and just want to play a role in a very, very vibrant board of that we see every month, and we make decisions and we do things that are really, really helpful in our community. And I want to encourage everyone to get involved as much as they can. You don't have to try to match anybody. You don't have to beat anybody. It's strictly a matter of doing what you can do. And the YMCA is a perfect way to get involved with your community. So if you're looking for a way to plug into the Anaheim Y.
Well, Paul, thank you. That way, certainly they're all game changers, but anybody can be a game changer. They just want to have the opportunity to try, and like you said, we'll find a spot for somebody that wants to make a better day, a better moment for a child or a family. Well, Paul, again, I just want to thank you for being with us here on the YMCA Game Changers podcast. We've learned a lot of great things, and I hope those that are listening in will take some of those essence to heart and make those things happen and help us continue to make Anaheim a great community to live, reside, and retire in.
Thanks for having me, Brent.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Paul.
it.
And I hope we'll see you next month on our YMCA Game Changers podcast. Thank you very much.